You're listening to the Packernet Podcast Network.
We all have smartphones, and we all know they're pretty amazing, but they also can be amazingly distracting, especially when we're around other people. So US Cellular wants us to reset our relationship with our phones by putting down our phones for $5. That's right, a company that sells phones wants us to put down our phones. And to see what we find, learn more at uscellular.com/built for us.
Why take one vacation with the family when you could take all of them? With Royal Caribbean, you don't just go to the beach. You visit a private island and race down the tallest water slide in North America. You don't just go for a road trip. You ATV and zip line through the jungle. You don't just go somewhere new. You rappel down waterfalls and discover ancient temples. Because this isn't just any vacation. This is all the vacations. Come seek the Royal Caribbean. Ships Registry, Bahamas.
This is the lowdown on the Packers UDFA crop. Some names you should know, they could rise to the top. A few hidden gems who slipped through the cracks. Now fighting for a spot with the green and gold pack.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to Packernet, the regular one, not after dark. I was going with the wrong intro. It doesn't matter. How y'all doing today? Today we're talking about, if you couldn't tell, undrafted free agents. I've been kind of avoiding it because what do you do with it? What do you do with a crop of guys that, you know, are going to get a lot of hype, are very unlikely to make the team, but at the same time, there's still a decent chance that somebody, you know, at least, well, probably going to make the team, but, you know, the impact, and how do you go about it? And I thought, you know what, let's look into it. Let's just look into it and see what we can find out about guys that actually do make a little bit of an impact. Who are the guys that generally make an impact? Is there some kind of a correlation, the position, the school, any of that stuff? So I went back through the undrafted free agents all the way back to 2018 when Gutekunst first started to see what I could find. Now, with all of the data type stuff that I like to do, it is, as always, an imperfect science. A lot of issues crop up, and at some point you just got to either scrap the project or be willing to say, oh, well, it's good enough. One of the big issues is a lot of the UDFAs kind of dance around. So there will be guys that are UDFAs that get picked up by Minnesota. 5 seconds later, they get dropped, and then later the Packers will pick them up. So there might be questions about, like, what about this guy? What about, you know, whatever? For example, I don't have any record of, like, outside of the long snapper we just picked up, any kickers, punters, none of that. But we have, and I looked into some of the punters and whatnot that we got, and it's like, well, he was technically over here first, and he did this, and he did that. Emmanuel Wilson is another example. I remember looking at that like, what, you know, I was expecting to see Emmanuel Wilson and all the impact he had. I think Emmanuel Wilson was with Minnesota very briefly before being let go by Minnesota, and then we picked him up. So this, I guess, would be considered like the very first initial guys that you pick up. But the bottom line is it's not meant to be an exact science. It's meant to look at a big body of information and just kind of see what you can glean from it.
So, all right, let's why don't we start by looking at our crop? We're aware of Trent Jones out of Michigan, who did decide to retire and go do TikToks, so we wish him the best. He has an extensive injury history and whatnot. To my knowledge, that leaves linebacker Raylan Goforth, running back Javian Howard, tight end Messiah Swinson, offensive tackle Donovan Jennings, long snapper Peter Bowden, defensive tackle James Esther, and defensive tackle Rodney Matthews out of Ohio. Now I want to go back and jog your memory on every undrafted free agent in alphabetical order that I could find that the Green Bay Packers picked up from 2023 all the way back to 2018. Akil Byers, Alex Light, Austin Davis, Bailey Gaither, Benny Sapp, Brenton Cox, C.J. Johnson, Caleb Jones, Cam McDonald, Carlo Kemp, Chauncey Manick, Chris Sazy, Christian Uphoff, Chuck Filiaga, Cole Schneider, Croy Conk, Damon Gibson, Danny Davis, Daryl Stewart, Delonte Scott, Deuce Watts, Ellis Brooks, Filippo Makofisi, Frankie Griffin, George Moore, Greg Greer Martini, that's a great name, Greg Roberts, Houti Patuta, Henry Pearson, Jack Heflin, Jacob Capra, Jahir Johnson, Jalen Morton, Jason Lawan, Javian Hamilton, Jimmy Phelps Jr., John Dietzen, Kabian Ento, Kadeem Telford, Kiki Chisholm, Keyshawn Banks, Chris Barnes, Kyle Meadows, Malik Heath, Manny Wilkins, Marc-Antoine Decoy, Matt Eaton, Nashawn Hughes, Nate Brooks, Patrick Taylor, Raleigh Texada, Randy Ramsey, Ryan Smith, Stanford Samuels, Tim Boyle, Tipa Nalii, Travis Bruffy, Trey Sterling, Tyler Goodson, Tyler Lancaster, Will Sunderland, Willington Pavilion, Yash Nyman, Zach Johnson. Now, unfortunately, what I'm doing is a little bit of that thing that I do sometimes that can be a little bit annoying, which is reminding everybody how really, it's a nicer way to say it. Let's just say these are all long shots. I wanted to read every single one of those names because I think a lot of times when we think UDFAs, we think, man, we've had a lot of success, and then we go through a couple names that are at the top of our head. I just listed off 64 names, many of whom you probably don't even remember. A lot of whom probably jogged your memory and were like, oh yeah, I forgot about that guy. Because that's the point. We forget about the guys that are forgettable. We remember the guys that actually end up making the roster and contributing, and I think it kind of gives us a different picture than what is reality. Of those 64, they played a grand total of 4,796 snaps. That averages 73 snaps per guy. Only 15 of those players played any snaps in the regular season for the Green Bay Packers. Only 10 played 10 or more snaps. Only 6 played 100 or more snaps. And only 3 played 1,000 or more snaps. 3 out of 64 in 6 years. Can you guess what 3 those were? Yash Nyman, Tyler Lancaster, Chris Barnes. Of the 15 that played, how many do you think had grades of 70 or higher? The answer, 1. Tipa Nalii. He ended with a very short stint of 161 snaps and a 76 PFF grade. So we had one player who played, any snaps at all that graded out positively or as good in 6 years for undrafted free agents. A couple other things that kind of surprised me a little bit. The Tipa thing surprised me for sure. Chris Barnes was one of the 3 that had played over 1,000 snaps. His PFF grade was a 48.5. Lancaster was a 63. Yash Nyman was a 62. Those are the 3 guys that actually played some level of starter reps. Malik Heath only has played, so far anyways, 121 snaps. Patrick Taylor was only 101. Jack Heflin, who I thought played a much bigger role than he did, only played 17 snaps for the Packers and had a 48 PFF grade. Tyler Goodson only played 16 snaps and had a 57 grade. Brenton Cox, obviously very young so far, but only 5 snaps. Tim Boyle might have been the more surprising for me, and maybe I don't know why, but he's seen as like a Packers legend for whatever reason. I don't really know why. Tim Boyle has now played since 2018 for 4 different teams. He has played 194 snaps for 4 different teams. How many of the 194 do you think were for Green Bay? 5. He played 95 snaps for Detroit, 8 for Chicago, and 86 for the Jets. He's more a Bear and Lion than he is a Packer. So very sorry to tell you. His largest stint was with Detroit, 95 snaps, 94 attempts, 61 completions, 526 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions. He's so bad. For the Jets, 77 attempts, 48 completions, 360 yards, 1 touchdown, 4 interceptions. For a career, 934 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 12 interceptions. Oh, the obsession with Boyle, I never understood and still don't. Wasn't that his whole thing in college, too? He threw like 500 billion interceptions. He had like 10 touchdowns and 30 interceptions or something. He is awful. Then we've got, Stanford Samuels played 13 snaps. Henry Pearson, the tight end fullback, 5 snaps, 47 PFF grade. Benny Sapp played 3 snaps, 60 grade. Keyshawn Banks, 2 snaps, 59.8. A lot of these guys also very familiar names that I thought had played some snaps, but never did. Alex Light, Caleb Jones, Greer Martini, I swore he played some snaps for us. Apparently he did not. Don't know why. Delonte Scott, Kabion Ento, all with 0 snaps, no contributions. So 15 out of 64 is 23%. So that's 1.64 if we look at 7 guys, the 8 that we have minus Trent Jones. How many of them are ever going to take a snap for the Packers? About 1.5, so 1 to 2. And if you had to guess on average how many snaps we're going to get total from this crop, it's about 500. But that's just kind of looking at it blind. That's just taking everything as it is, not really taking into account what positions these guys play, not taking into account what schools they came from. I want to do that after the break. We'll be right back. We all have smartphones, and we all know they're pretty amazing, but they also can be amazingly distracting, especially when we're around other people. So US Cellular wants us to reset our relationship with our phones by putting down our phones for $5. That's right, a company that sells phones wants us to put down our phones. And to see what we find, learn more at uscellular.com/built for us.
Why take one vacation with the family when you could take all of them? With Royal Caribbean, you don't just go to the beach. You visit a private island and race down the tallest water slide in North America. You don't just go for a road trip. You ATV and zip line through the jungle. You don't just go somewhere new. You rappel down waterfalls and discover ancient temples. Because this isn't just any vacation. This is all the vacations. Come seek the Royal Caribbean. Ships Registry, Bahamas.
This episode is supported by FX's Clipped, the scandalous story of the 2014 Clippers owner's racist remarks captured on tape and heard around the world. The series charts the tape's impact on a dysfunctional basketball organization striving to win against their reputation as the most cursed team in the league. Starring Lawrence Fishburne, Jackie Weaver, Cleopatra Coleman, and Ed O'Neill. FX's Clipped, streaming June 4th, only on Hulu.
Have you ever experienced turbulence on a flight and wondered why?
And you can see all the terrain around you. You've got no issue with visibility or anything?
No, everything's peachy.
Maybe you've sat on the tarmac for hours wondering why your plane isn't moving.
Well, we're outside here. They're saying the ramp is closed. They won't let us park because of Air Force One.
Listen in on the conversations between pilots and air traffic controllers on the Air Traffic Out of Control podcast.
510, declaring an emergency. There's smoke in the cabin. I need to make a landing right now on 31 left.
We have the most interesting, wild, and funny ATC recordings you will ever hear. Check out Air Traffic Out of Control wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts.
So let's take a look at the individual positions. I kind of lumped them into maybe a little bit more. Well, the offensive line is a little bit more of a broad position. It's not tackle, centers, and guards. It's just offensive line. The only position that I have, so again, there's no kickers, punters, long snappers. I think all the other positions are accounted for. The only position that has never taken a snap for the Green Bay Packers as an undrafted free agent is safety. The next in line would be tight ends at 6%, quarterbacks 6%, wide receivers, linebackers, and offensive line, all 6%. Next is 12%. That's cornerbacks and running backs. And then the highest is defensive line. It's defensive tackles and defensive ends. 18% of guys that come in along the defensive line end up taking snaps for the Green Bay Packers. So if we just look based on position and the likelihood they're in, we don't have any information on Peter Bowden because I'd have no idea. I've nothing here about long snappers. The least likely would be offensive tackle Donovan Jennings, tight end Messiah Swinson, and linebacker Raylan Goforth. The next more likely would be running back Jarvion Howard, and then the two most likely are the defensive linemen James Esther out of Northern Illinois and Rodney Matthews out of Ohio. But what if we also took into account what conference they went to? Because why not? So conferences that have never played a snap for the Green Bay Packers include the ASC, the Big 12, the Big Sky, CAA, the CFL, the CUSA, Independent, which like Notre Dame, NSIC, and SWAC. Of all the guys that have come from those different conferences, none of them have ever ended up taking a single snap. The next highest at 6%, the AAC. Remember, this is 6% of the people, what percentage of the people that took snaps came from this conference? 6% AAC, Pac-12, and Sun Belt. 12% ACC, MWC, and then finally 18% came from the Big Ten and the SEC. So not massively surprising that the bigger, more successful conferences tend to, even in the undrafted free agent realm, they're the guys that tend to translate a little better and end up actually getting on the field. So if we look at that, the most likely would actually be Peter Bowden from Wisconsin because he's from the Big Ten. After that would be Raylan Goforth, Messiah Swinson, and Donovan Jennings. Two of them are from the Pac-12, Donovan Jennings from the AAC. The two more likely guys based on the position, James Esther and Rodney Matthews, both come from the MAC. Packers have never taken an undrafted free agent from the MAC before. And then Jarvion Howard is from the SWAC, and nobody from there. We have picked up guys from there, but none of them have ever taken snaps. So what's funny about this is if you just add across, if you add the percentages together, Raylan Goforth, 12%, Jarvion Howard, 12%, Messiah Swinson, 12%, Donovan Jennings, 12%. Then if you look at Peter Bowden, James Esther, and Rodney Matthews, 18% across the board. And all of them are there's a lot of similarities. I mean, Goforth, Swinson, and Donovan Jennings are both 6% in both categories. Bowden, Esther, and Matthews both are in the 18% categories, but also have NAs in terms of the Packers have never done it before, so we don't have any data on it. Bowden being a long snapper, Esther and Matthews coming from the MAC. Jarvion Howard is the only one that has anything in a category that's a little bit different, where 0% have ever been taken from that group, but we've only taken one other person from there, and he's a running back, which is relatively high in, percentage of snaps coming from running backs. But I still put Bowden, Esther, and Matthews in the top spot for most likely to end up getting some snaps in Green Bay. And then finally, if we look at PFF grades, there's not a ton to glean, but it does seem as though there's some form of correlation. First of all, couple observations. Number one, there's really not very many terrible grades. There's not a lot of elite grades because those are the guys that ended up getting drafted. But there's a lot of high 60s, low 70s. There's also only two that were in like the 80 range, and both of those guys were in the higher snap count register. Tipa Naliai, who not only played fourth most snaps, but also was the highest graded guy. He was the highest graded in college of the undrafted free agents and the highest graded of the actual guys that played in the end. So it translated. The other was Tyler Lancaster. So if we kick that over to the current crop, we have one kind of bad grade. That's Messiah Swinson, tight end. The next not super great is Raylan Goforth, the linebacker, 59. And then you've got 66 PFF grade Peter Bowden, And then it's 70, Rodney Matthews, 72, James Esther, 73, Donovan Jennings, 73, Jarvion Howard. So if you want somebody that checks every single box, there's really one, and it's Donovan Jennings out of South Florida, the offensive tackle. It's not the highest in any one category, but you got 6% for position, 6% for conference, and a 73 PFF grade, which is the second highest, 72.8. Everybody else has some form of a red flag somewhere. If you want to call it a flag, like, never having picked up a long snapper. If not, well, 66.9, for example. The other guys, Esther and Rodney Matthews, again, the defensive tackles, haven't had guys from the MAC before, but 18% for defensive tackle, and both of these guys had pretty high grades. I would kind of lean in that direction, to be completely honest. Offensive tackle is a tough position to crack. Defensive tackle feels a little bit more realistic, although we do have a ton of guys there. Messiah Swinson makes me a little bit nervous with that 47 grade. I struggle with that. Bowden, I think there's a decent enough chance, having played in the Big Ten, and also it's kind of just a two-man competition. Jarvion Howard, I actually really like. Now, again, the SWAC, we've never had a guy take any snaps, but it's only been one guy. But you got running back, which pretty high translation. It's a position that maybe you could get a shot at least at a practice squad, and he had a 73 PFF grade. And then Raylan Goforth isn't a terrible option either. It's just the 59 PFF grade that makes me a little bit nervous. So if I had to sort them, it'd be tough. It's hard to do based on, again, I want to say James Esther number one, but again, that there's so many defensive tackles already. If we're talking like likely to make the team, I guess I would say Peter Bowden first, only because of really the competition thing, but also Big Ten, and the PFF wasn't terrible. I think after that, I'm going to say James Esther, then Rodney Matthews, then Donovan Jennings, because offensive line, although he's a tackle, it's kind of a position or, a position group that needs some help. Then Jarvion Howard, then Raylan Goforth, then Messiah Swinson. You could put Raylan Goforth higher if you want, based on, the need at linebacker. That certainly is a thing. But again, I'm just leery of that 59.4 grade. Plus, we do have quite a few bodies there. We drafted two guys, so they're more than likely going to make it. You got Quay. McDuffie's not going anywhere, and we got a guy that's a pretty solid special teamer, so it's a relatively tough position to get into. So I'd probably stick with that as my 1 through 7. Anyways, that's all I got for that. Why don't we take our final break, and we'll be right back with some stuff you got to hear. It's very important. We'll be right back.
Caleb Williams was in the Bears uniform. I feel like he lost all his swag the minute he put a Bears uniform on and had to act like a quarterback.
You're scarred.
So
you are scarred.
Would you change the uniform then?
Yeah, maybe. Maybe just change the whole color scheme.
Come out with red, white, and blue on.
The Caleb City Connect uniforms for just his career?
Yeah. Like, let's do like a Miami Vice, like black and pink or something, like something to pop. He's got to do something. He's got to get a visor. He's got to get something to swag it up so that I can feel comfortable.
I saw him at the rookie mini camp throwing the football in that Bears uniform.
Different uniform.
And it was great.
Uniform.
Oh, because he was wearing the orange.
Uniform.
Yeah, he was wearing the orange.
I agree with you. He looked awesome there. I was talking about the full Bears uniform, the game day uniform with the helmet on, everything.
That's a you problem.
He had so much swag when he had. How's that a me problem?
That's a you problem. You're scarred. You see any quarterback in a Bears uniform and you think Mitch.
It is hilarious to me. You've already got people melting down. Presumably, this is in part due to the report that Caleb Williams looked terrible. And this is Big Cat from Barstool calling into ESPN Chicago. And of course, ESPN Chicago trying to do their part to be overly optimistic, as Bears fans are wont to do, getting overjoyed and excited about Caleb and how great it's going to be. And he calls in, he's like, man, I don't know, this sucks. We got to maybe just get him a new uniform. And they're just so annoyed that he's like giving up already. I just love it. I mean, listen, I'm willing to bet we're going to have some more OTAs pretty soon for the Chicago Bears. And there's going to be some really positive reports, especially now that it's been, there's like one report that came out that Caleb looked terrible with the offense and it blew up. And I'm sure the reporters are going to go out of their way to overly accentuate every positive thing that happens to try to counteract all the negativity around Caleb. So we're going to hear some positive stuff. But in the meantime, I love this so much. Caleb goes out there and looks like absolute dog crap. Bears fans are so scarred as it is. They get Caleb. They're trying to forget the fact that they just 5 seconds ago were screaming at Packer fans that there's no way Justin's going anywhere. He's the guy. He's the king of the North. He's better than Love. Ha, ha, ha. Now Love is about to get some massive contract because he actually is the guy. Justin's garbage and got traded away for Peanut. They're trying to swallow down that pain that they have. And the first reports they get out of Caleb is that like every pass was either picked, nearly picked, hitting the ground. It was just horrific. Anyways, I love it. I love that they're already just panicked. So I figure, lean into it a little bit.
Brought to you by ChevyDriveChicago.com. Okay, Josh, you were there at the Bears' first open OTA. You got a glimpse of Caleb Williams, who apparently did throw an incompletion for the record. The offense did struggle based on accounts. The red zone offense did fizzle, apparently. Why is everybody so concerned? When you look at the calendar, I don't see the Titans coming up Sunday. It still is May.
Because it's May. What else are we going to talk about, right? We've spent 3-4 months talking about Caleb Williams and everything that he can and probably will bring to this franchise. And it's his first practice in shorts against an NFL defense, and he looked exactly like a rookie should look. He looked like he struggled with the speed of the game, with the tight windows. He's still learning the playbook. He's still getting used to it.
There's a little banner on the bottom that says Caleb Williams completed 3 passes today.
All of his new receivers, no Keenan Allen, no Ramadunze, 2/5 of the offensive line were not there. Everything was as expected. You don't expect Caleb Williams to parachute in and go 19 for 20 on day one.
Do you think it's a product of just the expectations being enormous and maybe outsized, and the fact that, we forget sometimes in that rush to anoint him that he is going to have days like he did on Thursday?
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with that. It has to do with being in the Chicago bubble.
Doesn't this just make you sick as a Bears fan? I mean, seriously, if you're a Bears fan and you're listening, I mean, come on. How many times do you have to go through this? I don't care if it's not time to panic yet. How sick are you of hearing it's too early to panic? It was too early to panic about Justin Fields like 6 months ago, for crying out loud. This is the constant refrain. Something bad happens, and then you have your personality people, your YouTube figures, your news figures, your people within your fan base telling you, "Oh, calm down. It's not that big. You're overreacting." Aren't you tired of that? Doesn't that send chills down your spine just immediately hearing all the excuses come out? Oh, well, it's just May. This is what the crazy people do is they panic. I mean, look, he didn't have his receivers and he didn't have this and it was only day one and reasons and reasons and reasons and reasons. That's all you have is reasons and no results. Just reasons, also known as excuses.
With OTAs, a lot of buzz about Caleb Williams having a rough day. I see that, Mark Grody, as an opportunity for learning and growth and a very good defense to show Caleb what life is going to be like.
I mean, seriously, it's the same thing every time I tune in to see, like, are you upset yet? No, it's just because the defense is so good. This is such a good thing that happened. I'm so happy that it happened. It's probably making him stronger. He's probably Superman. Bro, every single one of you wanted him to step in and tear things up, and then it didn't happen. And now you're making excuses that it's a good thing. Come on, man. Just take it on the frickin' chin, okay? It's the tiniest of L's that you could possibly take. It's day one of OTAs. It really doesn't matter that much, but at least take the frickin' pill like a man, would you? Oh, actually, it's a good thing. It's good that he sucked. Yeah, because then he's gonna learn. It's good that he sucked because it means our defense is just so good. That's why he just missed. That's why he sailed it over the guy's head, because the defense is so Intimidating. Okay.
It is May, okay? We're not spilling state secrets here. So, like, when it comes out the other day that Caleb in the offense really struggled, it's like, well, what happened the other 2 days? I don't know. I mean, other than what they say at the podium, we're just kind of guessing. So I think it's incomplete information, and I do think that's what makes it tough. And that's why I'm still going to put Caleb Williams in the winner category. And Harrison, you're being a homer.
He's doing winners and losers. And they have reports that Caleb looked like garbage, and he puts him in the winners category. This is just classic Chicago Bears fan nonsense.
For the only info we has is that he sucked at practice. Well, let me explain here. A couple of things that I do want to get out there and get my thoughts on. Number one, yes, all the reporting from people who were at practice and who saw is that, yeah, he struggled. Well, a couple things. One, Rome Odunze's not practicing. Hopefully he will be next week. He's recovering from the minor hamstring issue, and Keenan Allen wasn't there either. So I think, like, yeah, you got DJ Moore, who's going up against Jalen Johnson, but you expect Tyler Scott to beat Kyler Gordon and Tyreek Stevenson consistently, because I don't. So you have that. And then I think this is important, too. Kevin Byard, safety, who's already emerged himself as a leader here, just a few months on the team. He said the first day, the offense really got after us. He made some good throws, some deep passes. He had a really good day. Today we got after him. And again, this is what's frustrating.
So why is he in the winners? You haven't even explained that. Because excuses? Because some player said that he made some good throws the day before? This homer nonsense. So listen, it just brings great joy knowing that it's the same thing over and over again. It's the same, and it's gotta, again, from my perspective, I don't know, the dude might be elite. I have no idea. But it has to bother Bears fans at a guttural level to be doing this again. Anyways, more things change and more they stay the same. I'm going to get out of here. You guys have a good rest of your day. I'll talk to you tonight, tomorrow, whatever. Have a good one. Bye-bye.